We're now around 1 week away from the launch of Halo 3 ODST, which means that it's time for me to review the final game in the Halo trilogy, Halo 3. It's worth mentioning that there's actually too much stuff for me to cover in one video because of the 10-minute time limit that YouTube has, so this video is divided into different sections talking about the relevant parts of the game. If you've got YouTube annotations turned on, you can click on one of the options below to view that part of the review. In this section of the review, I'm going to be covering general topics such as the graphics and the soundtrack. Don't worry about having to skip back here once the video is over though, because these options will show up again and I'll put links to the different parts in the show notes. Halo 3 is a great looking game. Okay, sure, it's not exactly Gears of War or Mass Effect, but it's certainly not a bad looking game. There's hardly any texture popping and the frame rate remains solid, which is impressive considering the number of explosions that you can have on screen at once. There's also some pretty impressive attention to detail, like on one level you can actually see barnacles attached to the surface of rocks and walls, and if you look up close at some of the armour in the game you can see bumps and scratches on it. And if you go into an explosion, the way the game looks changes, which can make for some pretty impressive screenshots, which I'll talk more about later in different parts of the review. If I had to complain about the graphics, it would be the lack of anti-aliasing. It might not be particularly visible in this video, but when I'm playing this game in 720p on my TV, that ship in the distance has a lot of jagged edges. Also, sometimes the graphics just fail to set the mood properly. I mean, check out this example. We're in the middle of a flood-infested ship and everything looks colourful. In Halo 1 and Halo 2 the levels were really dark and creepy, but in this game it seems to be devoid of any of that kind of atmosphere, which I find kind of disappointing. Like I said, Halo 3 is by no means an ugly game to look at. The water effects are pretty good and the frame rate holds up pretty well. It's just disappointing how the graphics just fail to set the mood properly sometimes. Just like in the previous Halo games, the Halo 3 soundtrack is composed by Martin O'Donnell. There's a mix of new songs and older songs from the Halo franchise that have been remixed here. If you've played the previous two Halo games, you're going to recognise a lot of the music that's here. It's nice to have that look back over the previous games, but to be honest, part of me would have preferred some new music to listen to. Another problem is that the music, just like the graphics, can fail to capture the mood properly. Again, in Halo 1 or Halo 2, the music that was played in the flood levels was dark and creepy, but there's none of that here in Halo 3. The music isn't bad, and the soundtrack is definitely well worth listening to, but it just fails to fit the mood sometimes. The sound in Halo 3 is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the guns and explosions sound right, but the assault rifle just sounds, well, stupid. Listen to this. Is it just me, or does it sound like a popcorn machine? I also have a problem with some of the voice acting. While the voice acting for the main characters is pretty good, the same can't really be said for some of the NPCs in the game. This is most notable when the Marines are supposed to be scared of something, and they scream. It just sounds forced and it feels like there's hardly any emotion put into it at all. For the most part the sound is fine, and I'm impressed with how some of the different weapons sound when you're far away from them, but the assault rifle just sounds stupid and some of the voice acting could be better. That's it for this section of the review. Click on one of the annotations below to check out a different part of the review.